Well, hello there.
Hey there.
Fathers, sons of fathers, daughters of fathers, anybody with a father or who is a father, happy Father's Day, and thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Father. No, excuse me, this is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. Thank you for joining us. We are glad you are here. Give me a moment here. I got to make sure my chat is up because I do want to see you all in the chat. Looking good on YouTube. Facebook, why are you stalling? Let's see what's going on here. Nope, that's not what I wanted either. Miss this list. I say confirm. Huh. Okay, hold on just a second. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. But I do believe we are live and looking good. Thanks for joining us. Today is Sunday, June 16th, Father's Day. I was going to say here in the United States, but this is a worldwide thing, isn't it? And we are glad you are here. I do see, there is Jim in the chat. Paul is in the chat as well, and Christopher, thank you. Don't know why those messages seem to be coming in late. All is well.
Yeah, and Jeff Bannister is in the chat.
Oh,
fantastic.
Cool. Hi, Jeff.
Hope you're doing well, Jeff, and thinking of you, and yeah.
Happy Father's Day. I'm curious to see if Stephen Katz is going to show up in the chat. And the reason I say that is I'm actually going to steal something from one of his posts on the socials, on the Facebooks. So we will see if he shows up by the time that I mention that. But let me start by saying happy Sunday. Happy June 16th. Today is the 168th day of this. Your best year yet. If it's not your best year yet, you do have 198. We're under 200 days left. 198 days left to make that happen.
What? You mean like tomorrow is 2025?
Practically. Christmas is in just 192 days. Halloween in 137.
Oof.
Still 3 digits, so you've got a little time to decorate. And on this date in 1215, yes, we're going all the way back to 1215. We always like to cover a little history, especially the history of liberty. On this date in 1215, King John, this is the first King John, put his seal on the Magna Carta.
Oh, very good.
I guess in Britain they don't say the Magna Carta, they just say Magna Carta.
Like they say hospital or
That's true. They don't say I'm going to the hospital. They say I'm going to hospital.
Yes.
It's a curious thing that the British need to learn to speak English. So yes, the Magna Carta Libertatum, Great Charter of Freedoms, commonly just called the Magna Carta or the Great Charter. What's interesting about this, the reason I bring it up, and you'll see how this relates to themes I've talked about before, the Magna Carta essentially established that everybody, not just the underlings of the king, but even the king himself, is subject to the law. That we all have the same liberties and we all have the same obligations. It's sort of an early version of equal under the law. But what's interesting is you think, well, 1215, I mean, that was practically not the Dark Ages, but, the medieval period. Did anybody really respect liberty at that time? Well, they were learning to, slowly but surely. The Magna Carta, which we revere as one of the beginning documents of liberty, it actually only assured these protections to the landowners and above. Mm-hmm. And the peasants were considered owned by the lands that they were working for, the barons.
Right.
So the barons now had the same protections as the king. And this went back and forth. You all know the kings at some point said, nah, forget that. The Magna Carta was actually reinstated 3 separate times over the course of the next 100, 200 years. But this was the date the first one was signed. My point is, and you've heard me say this before, liberty came in stages, in steps, in waves. The Magna Carta we do properly respect and revere as an early document in the direction of liberty. It wasn't the Constitution of the United States. It wasn't anything like that, but it was getting us there. These things happen slow, and that is one more reason why I appreciate everything we have now, because I see how everything has come in stages. Things have gotten a little better all the time, and they still do.
Yeah, little did they know in the 13th century that, the rulers at that time, that this would lead to a gradual uplift of individual rights. It would take 500 years, but or more.
Yeah.
But actually, we're at a good place right now, and we really should be thankful for it. We still have some things to work out, Yeah, I think we're in a fairly good spot relative to history.
See, I am told that we're one step, or maybe one little tap, one push away from the collapse of everything. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today, because we got to talk about how to save the world.
Well, it could be worse. Instead of a collapse, it could be just nothing had been built yet. So.
Good point. Good point. That's why, well, we'll get to that. Magna Carta Day, absolutely. And you're right, 500 years later, what happens? Well, almost 500 years later, in fact, 508 years later, is the birth of the great Scotsman, Adam Smith. So we celebrate liberty even more 500 years later with the birth of Adam Smith, of course, the economist who wrote The Wealth of Nations. And he was also a moral philosopher, a little more mixed in that regard. But as an economist, as a writer on liberty and writing in the 1700s, the great man. The man who may have, well, set the stage for the saving of all of us, including the establishment of, I'm so biased, I was going to say the United States of America. England was already learning those lessons at that time. And from the Scotsman, Adam Smith, his birthday today in 1723. He actually lived till 1790. Not as long as we might like to live. That's a good long life right there. It's also June 16th. June 16th is National Fudge Day. Yeah, my understanding is that a baker, a confectioner, was producing caramel, and he made a mistake in the recipe and came up with fudge instead. We've been eating a little lean over the last few weeks because for a few reasons, including a wedding that we attended last night. Pictures on Facebook.com/Robert Nasir. So we haven't been eating any fudge, but we could make an exception. Maybe we'll go out and find some, because it is National Fudge Day. So light them if you've got them.
So fudge is made of sugar, lots of sugar, cream, yes. like heavy cream,
yep.
And then butter. And then chocolate or other flavorings or nuts or however. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Boiled until it reaches the soft ball stage.
Yes.
And stirred and beaten as it cools to minimize the formation of sugar crystals. It's fun to watch fudge being made. If you can go to some place where they make it on the cold marble slab in front of you, it's very cool. Pun intended. Actually, not intended. Pun unintended. No pun intended. Puns should be intended. Be bold. Intend your puns. And there's one more holiday to celebrate today, and I'm holding it in my bandaged finger here. I had a little accident earlier today, but you see the Dad Rocks mug. Well, of course, it's Father's Day. So I am celebrating Father's Day. In fact, I could celebrate with the party lights. My daughter knows I collect party lights, so we could do the effect. Oh, look at that on the screen there.
That's so pretty.
So we could totally do the party lights. Oh, I think it's doing the audio thing. See, if I stay quiet, it doesn't change. Oh, yeah. So big thanks to my daughter for the card, for the LED lights, for the mug, which didn't come this year, but I've been enjoying this. This is a bit, I know it looks like a coffee cup, but this holds like 2.5 cups of coffee. Say serious, because she knows I'm a coffee guy.
Yeah.
But we also have the Father's Day decoration. I know it looks like this is part of the microphone, but it's actually back here.
Yeah.
And this from, of course, from my darling Amy. There, we'll put that like that. No, fell right back. Yeah, it looks like it's mounted on the mic, which is just fine. I hope those of you who have fathers are celebrating your fathers, assuming you have good fathers and you have good reason to celebrate them. Those of you who are fathers, I hope you are being celebrated today. And just the whole father thing. I hope you're getting something out of this fine day. I certainly am. Incidentally, is it that good chocolate, man? I don't know. I got to catch up on the chat here. But real quick, this normally would wait till the end of the show. Post-it note for the day. This is one of those days when I don't have one. So if you've got an idea for the post-it note of the day, write it in capital letters in the chat. And I've actually got 3 pads today. So if you can come up with 3 good post-it notes, that would be cool. If you can even come up with one of them, I will be impressed. What would you put on a note that you would want to see? Stick it up somewhere where you see it all week. Remind yourself through the course of the week. And that's it. That's it for On This Date. Happy Father's Day. Happy birthday, Adam Smith. Have some fudge to celebrate if you can. So I was on the socials. I was on the internet. And there's a conversation going on that relates to the kind of week that we've had. Wow, have we had a week?
Yes.
What kind of week have we? I can't even remember everything that happened this week. The flamenco performance was last week, right?
Yeah, that was last week.
Everything is in a blur. Wedding this week. Well, you go to somebody's wedding, you're like, oh, okay, I got to dress up. Oh, yeah, I got to come up with a wedding present. It's not that big a deal. But Amy, you were in the wedding party.
Yeah, I was a bridesmaid.
And that changes everything.
Yep.
So we have had a heck of a week. So, quick topic today. All we're talking about is how to save the world.
That's it?
That's it. Yeah. it came up on Stephen Katz's wall. Now, Stephen he's been kind of, I don't know if he was inspired by what we do here, but he's been doing a lot of On the State, but he's also been talking about objectivism. You know, that philosophy of Ayn Rand. And Leonard Peikoff as well, who, of course, was the greatest writer on the ideas of Ayn Rand, besides Rand herself. And he posted this from OPAR. OPAR, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. All the objectivists already know. Oh, I know what OPAR is. I probably don't even remember the title of the book, but I know it's called OPAR. And in this book, in the very end of the book, he uses a line that was originally in his Certainty and Happiness talk. And here's what he wrote, and this is what Stephen posts. To save the world is the simple. This is Leonard Peikoff. To save the world is the simplest thing in the world. All one has to do is think. And Stephen responded to that saying, do you really think it's that easy? And because of the way that he posted it and then the way he posed his question, and some of you may catch the quirk there. To save the world is the simplest thing in the world. All one has to do is think. Well, do you really think it's that easy? Well, he didn't say it was easy. All he said was it was simple. So that was my answer to Stephen there. No, it's not that easy, but it is that simple. But there's a bunch of lessons that come from just this quirky quote and the question about it, which is why I couldn't resist bringing it up. I was talking to my daughter earlier today. We had breakfast together to celebrate Father's Day, and the topic of racism came up. Mm-hmm. We've talked about racism before.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually did a whole episode of Life on Earth about racism. The link is in the show notes. That was a fun episode to do because I started with Dilbert. Well, the author of Dilbert, the now shamed author of Dilbert, who thought he would be clever in fighting racism by using terms that were basically racist. Scott Adams, you may know, used to be a comic strip artist, creator of Dilbert. Made him a ton of money, very famous, very successful. 2,000 newspapers carried his comic. And then he decided to start weighing in on topics like racism and anti-racism and got himself canceled. Pretty dramatically. And he's one of the people who got canceled where I thought, it's like he wanted to be canceled. He begged to be canceled. If you listen to my program or just watch the program that got him canceled, you will know what I'm talking about. He thought he was being clever. If you've heard the expression, too clever by half, it was like that. He was not being clever. He was being very clever in formulating a very stupid statement. So, this episode I talked about Scott Adams, and then I talked about Ibram X. Kendi, our favorite person in the world. No, just kidding, but the author of Antiracism, and compared the two, and I talked to my daughter about that this morning. My daughter, not an objectivist, and she is very much somebody who likes to see both sides of any given issue. And I think I did a good job with that in that episode. Mm-hmm. But then I saw Stephen Katz post about saving the world, and I thought, well, wait a minute. What would it mean to save the world?
Well, I mean, actually, it'd be fairly easy.
Well, but what would it mean? What does it even mean to save the world?
Well, I would say that I would start with promote reason, promote the ideas that, of what the human identity actually is, what we actually are made of and capable of, and how we function and how we should function. And basically put together a social structure that would protect our actions, basically our freedom of action, and our individual rights. So
saving the world would mean moving things in that direction?
Yeah, moving things in that direction. But also in the meantime, while we're not quite there politically, is make sure that people understand what values are, and that values come out of what I would call, selfish thinking. So thinking about your own life, what your values are, why you love them, who you love and why you love them. Understand why you like what you like. Understand why you want to fight for what you love. And take those actions. And understand that there has to be actions that actually protect those values that you do have.
Okay.
And now you can get into that politically, but I think really it's most important to talk about ethically, and how you really cannot base your values on duty ethics or anything that's unthinking, anything that requires non-thinking, basically.
Okay, I get all of that, and I appreciate and I respect,
and that's actually
that
what we
all
do.
of that is important and that it matters.
And that's what we do on the show.
But how do you save the world? At what point, in doing all of those important things, can you say, "Okay, I saved the world"?
You have to talk about it in the way that I'm talking about it, because everyone's an individual, so everybody has to process these ideas themselves.
Right.
And so you can't just take some sort of, grand sweeping gesture and wave a magic wand collectively.
Right.
And save the world.
But when people say, when Leonard Peikoff says, to save the world is the simplest thing in the world, all one has to do is think. Now.
Yeah, well, what's under that? What is under all of that?
Part of my context for bringing this up is the good news. And if any of you haven't heard the good news, those of you who are fans of Ayn Rand, those of you who regard yourself as objectivists, or just those of you who want to save the world.
It's not that a religious figure is coming back.
No. If you haven't seen it yet, you need to watch a YouTube video. It was a live video from this afternoon called Live from OCON 2024, Spreading Objectivism, A Vision for ARI's Future, with Tsfany. Yaron Brook was on there for a while, too, as part of the big announcement. They talked about a lot of very cool things, but big announcement at the end, they're actually opening... They're going to build an Ayn Rand Center in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't the Ayn Rand Center UK, the Ayn Rand Center Israel, all of the different Ayn Rand centers, which are great around the world, including places where they've done Ayn Rand cons. The one in London was so good. No, this is an Ayn Rand building, a campus. It's a combination of campus and museum and a big building. It's the coolest thing. You need to see the video. Part of what was fun about the video is when Tal gets to that part where he shows it. It's done with like a combination of AI and drafting animations. So you see this amazing building they're looking at building. And when you see people in it, they're kind of animated, but AI, so they don't look like real people, but they kind of do. And then the first real person that you actually see is Amy.
Yes.
Which, of course...
I'm the first actual human representative in that video when they're talking about that. So apparently they want us to move to Austin, Texas, and, and I don't know, maybe rifle through some things. They actually, at previous OCON, they had sort of a pop-up archival display, sort of like a museum-type display.
Yes.
And it was really lovely. There were letters by Ayn Rand. There were handwritten notes. There were pictures. And I love that stuff. Audra Hilsey actually has a lot to do, and Brandon Lee, I believe. They have a lot to do with this, and I love what they do. They do a lot with it. And anyway, I was enjoying myself, and I was looking, and I noticed that they actually shot some video of me perusing or going through and studying everything. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there I am with my flaming red hair at the time.
It was very cool. Yeah, it was, you're right, Audrey Hilson and Brandon Lisi involved with the Ayn Rand archives. And I think they used that footage in the wrap-up for that particular OCON. Well, they brought it out again. It was kind of cool to see. They're building this great building. It's interesting building. The way they're doing it, it almost looks like a set of books. The architecture of it, it's many stories tall, but it doesn't look like books, but it reminds you of books, which is the idea. It's a great motif. Very, very cool. Well, not only are they creating this campus, which is now going to be the physical location for the Ayn Rand University, even though people will continue to do work remotely, they're going to have events that will be in person there. They're also moving the institute there.
Yeah,
it's going to be the new location. In other words, some of you have been saying, why is ARI, why is the Ayn Rand Institute in California?
They're not going back to Cali. They're moving out of it.
Moving out of Cali. Cali.
They're
gone.
On up
Bye-bye, Newsom.
To a deluxe apartment in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, moving on up. That is so cool. Well, when Leonard Peikoff says to save the world, what would it mean to save the world? Well, the Ayn Rand Institute is saving the world. Well, are they really saving the world? They're, one institute. There's a lot of think tanks out there, many bigger ones than the Ayn Rand Institute, and some that are much more famous or popular or well-known or at least funded. But what would it mean to say any of them? Pick a big one, a Heritage Foundation. Are they saving the world? Are those, different, like the Hillsdale College, are they saving the world?
No.
Oh, yeah, with them, you're tempted to just, boom, not saving the world. When Leonard Peikoff says to save the world is the simplest thing in the world, all you have to do is think.
All you have to do is think. But that starts with yourself. That starts with, looking at your own life, looking at your own thinking, looking at how your thinking relates to your actions, looking at how your thinking and your ideas actually integrate into what your goals are for the long term. And there's a lot of thinking going on, guys. And it is not just thinking about, oh, so-and-so should be doing this, or there ought to be a law. That's kind of lame thinking. You need to start from yourself first.
Yeah, Robin's mentioning London. Sorry, you're right, Robin. London was great. Meeting you was great.
Yeah, it was really cool.
London was so good. It really was.
London was great.
Miami was cool. All of them. Washington, D.C. was cool, but London
was wonderful.
That was really cool.
I really want to go back.
and the previous time we had been to Europe, we went on vacation. We went to Paris, and I thought, well, that's going to be hard to beat. But in some ways, just because of all the good people, London was better than Paris.
Oh, yeah.
Which is weird.
Well, there weren't a lot of people that we met in Paris.
We didn't meet great people in Paris.
Yeah.
The French can be a little prickly. They're charming, and they speak French, so that makes them all super nice.
They have
but they're not really.
They're high standards for croissants and such.
Haughty. Yeah. Anyway, London was great. The Leonard Peikoff quote there from OPAR, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. It's interesting because his first iteration of that, the first time he said that, was in Certainty and Happiness, Achieving Success in Thought and Action. And I love the quote from that toward the end of his talk when he's summing up what he's saying. And it's kind of on that topic of saving the world, but he makes it more personal, and this gives you a clue to, well, what do we do with that idea of saving the world? Here's what he said. He said, quoting Spinoza, all things excellent are as difficult as they are rare.
Mm-hmm.
I know that kind of makes it sound like less hopeful. Like there aren't that many truly great people out there, or great things out there, right? Or something. So it makes it sound like it's going to be hard. But then he goes on. In another respect, however, this is Leonard Peikoff, Certainty and Happiness, Achieving Success in Thought and Action. In another respect, however, and this is Ayn Rand's unique perspective, to attain happiness, so far from being extraordinarily difficult, is the simplest thing in the world. If she were here, Leonard Peikoff says, if she were here, she would say, all you have to do is live.
Mm-hmm.
just as to attain certainty. So far from being difficult, is the simplest thing in the world because all you have to do is think. Unquote Leonard Peikoff. Now think about that. To attain happiness, remember the talks about certainty and happiness. To attain happiness, so far from being extraordinarily difficult, is the simplest thing in the world. If she were here, she would say, all you have to do is live. Well, obviously, that implies living consistent with the facts of reality. So, rationally and productively and with justice and integrity and all of the things it means to live rationally, to live right, to live effectively, to live in accordance with your nature. Just as to attain certainty is the simplest thing in the world because all you have to do is think. Which, again, going on from there, implies thinking rationally, thinking with a rational epistemology, thinking with a proper psychology, thinking effectively. Okay, great. That makes sense. Certainty, happiness, kind of like, oh, here's how I'm going to apply objectivism in my life and make it work. But then in OPAR, when he writes, and Stephen quotes, to save the world is the simplest thing. To save the world. Now we're not just talking about achieving success in thought and action. To save the world is the simplest thing in the world. All one has to do is think. Well, what is the implication? What are the provisos? What is he bringing into that? Well, he just wrote this whole book. That quote comes from near the end in the epilogue. So to think, all you have to do is think, is all you have to do is do what's in this book. Saving the world is the easiest thing in the world. Well, think about that for a second. And I am making a point here, and I'm not going to go on much longer. What does it mean to think if all it takes to save the world is to think? And the answer is to do everything in the book, to think rationally and act accordingly, which has always been my shortest summation of objectivism in 4 words. Think rationally and act accordingly. Understand the stuff and then do the stuff. Well, wait. Still haven't saved the world, have we? But question that premise. I love that Ayn Rand would say, check your premises. Check that premise. What does it mean to save the world? Feel free, folks, to put it in the chat. What do you think it means to save the world? Christopher Smith says, well, save the world from tyranny. Can you save the world from tyranny? Can anybody save the world from tyranny? Well, enough voices raised rationally and effectively and self-assertively and with moral fire, raised in the name of liberty. Enough people speaking out for liberty, which friends of mine would never guess in a million years also means capitalism. Maybe that could save the world from, well, it could cut down on the amount of tyranny in the world.
I know that way back when I was younger, and I was at the time I was actually kind of dabbling in libertarianism, which I never got into. I thought to myself, we've got to become political, and then at a certain time we're going to have to fight for our freedoms, and we're going to have to own tons of guns, and we're going to have to actually have shootouts, or I don't know entirely. Then become a prepper perhaps, and it comes down to assuming that the people around you, the government around you, is going to become forceful and try to lock you up for reasons that are unethical and unlawful, at least until right now. And it's going to have to look like that. It's going to have to look like the American Revolution. It's going to have to, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes, and all the stories from New England, and all the stories in our 13 colonies, and so on and so forth. But anytime we talk about the American Revolution, for instance, we don't talk about all those nights that the Founding Fathers met with each other and had meetings, put together plans, wrote up documents, wrote the Federalist Papers, all the stuff, all of these intellectual pursuits.
And shared it.
And shared
it with the people. Do you think the Founding Fathers could have had any chance whatsoever if 99% of the population were loyalists, loyal to the British Crown?
Right.
If they hadn't put the ideas out there and gotten at least half of the people to demand liberty. And a few brave souls who were willing to risk their lives in the name of it.
Yes.
So I think it's all of the above. It's interesting you use the word preppers, which we tend to do with a bit of a grimace, but there are people who go further than preppers, and there, we have the Michigan militia here in Motown, for example. Well, they're really out near Lansing, but you have all different levels of the fight for liberty. Is it going to take everybody to carry arms? No, and not only that, that wouldn't work. That actually wouldn't. That doesn't get you liberty. That's a longer discussion about Second Amendment and what parts of that matter, what parts of that actually move us in the direction of liberty. But when you are working to save the world, and Lord knows we are working to save the world, I think you need to contextualize your role. You need to right-size your expectations. You need to realize, well, this is something that I do because it gives me moral fire, because it gives me fuel, because I want to see a better world. And it may be that with all of my writing, all of our podcasts, all of the conversations we have, all of the votes that we do, all of the protests that we have done in front of the Capitol building in Lansing and the White House in Washington, D.C., all of the things we have done, they have had an impact that may or may not be measurable on the world stage, but we have had our impact. And all of those things that we did, all of the Tea Party rallies, all of the booths that we've said, I could go on, all of them were worth it. They were an end in themselves to be part of that fight. But did they save the world? Well, the most you can say, or most I can say, maybe your life is different. The most I can say is they played a small part in the saving of the world. I said before, and I'll say it again, so I'll say it right now, Ayn Rand has already saved the world several times over. And I have friends in the objectivist movement who say, no, objectivism isn't winning. We haven't won yet. Well, what's it going to mean when we've won? What's it going to mean when we saved the world? To say that Ayn Rand hasn't saved the world is to misunderstand what that means. And it's a failure of imagination to realize what kind of world we would live in if we had not had an Ayn Rand in it.
I was thinking about this the other night, and I thought, God, so many things that Ayn Rand talked about. And, even in her, if you read the early Ayn Rand, her early fiction, and of course, The Fountainhead, and you've got Atlas Shrugged, and you have, all these things that she wrote, and all of these observations she made about human beings, and how... And the reasons why they do things, both psychological and philosophical, and how so important it is for people to have the vocabulary and the understanding philosophically, and and philosophy, it can be difficult getting into, difficult integrating at first, but gosh darn it all, it makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I use every day. And, but yeah, the kinds of things that the kind of observations she made, especially with some of the characters in her fiction writing, when she's talking about people abandoning their own souls, or people refusing to think, people evading, not just evading, but just kind of sliding into sort of a grayness, and or not even necessarily throwing their hands up in the air, but just kind of sliding into a situation where they feel comfortable and they don't really need to think about anything, and they don't need to actually question what's around them, and they're just not interested. And that just, you would think that would be, people can kind of move on inertia, or have momentum and keep going. But honestly, I'm so profoundly grateful that I found her ideas, because I don't see myself at any point in my life just slipping into the grayness or slipping into the momentum of what I have, or resting on my laurels, as you could say. No, I'm going to always think about things. I'm always going to evaluate. I'm always going to judge what's around me, and it's a wonderful thing to have. And I'm not just talking about political or even ethical ideas. I get to judge and evaluate what I want in life and why I love the things that I love, and how can I get those things that I really want. It really brings me, like you said, Robert, in bringing up certainty and happiness. The recording by Leonard Peikoff, which I really do need to listen to again. I haven't listened to it in years. But I am profoundly grateful that I found this philosophy, that Ayn Rand existed, that she was an actual flesh and blood woman. She was a writer who wrote fiercely and so honestly about the things around her. And she didn't flinch when anybody tried to say, oh, you can't say that because it might offend, or however, or you can't say that because people won't understand, or the characters in your novels those aren't actually representative of real people. She didn't take any of that to heart because she knew that wasn't true. And the observations that she made in life really did pan out. It's not just about being prescient or predicting the future in Atlas Shrugged politically. She was a keen observer of human nature, and the best one I've ever. I mean, I don't know. There's nobody else as good as she was. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy to know these ideas and to apply them to my life, and to apply them to all of the values that I have in my life.
Yeah, we did an episode on how to take over the world. And I still recommend that you do exactly that. And that is half the answer to the question, what does it mean to save the world? Now, I know when people say they want to save the world, what they really mean is, well, I want the government to leave me alone. I want them to cut my taxes. I want less, well, as somebody says in the chat, less tyranny. Aldous Huxley, George Orwell, Ayn Rand. You just imagine the 1900s and certainly the 21st century without those three authors, without Brave New World, without 1984, and without Atlas Shrugged. And think of all the politicians, and you can argue about how much impact Ayn Rand really had, but think about all the politicians who were influenced just by those three works. And a few on top, Fahrenheit 451, is books against specifically political, economic, and moral oppression. Where would we be without those writers, without Animal Farm, without these just three people, Huxley, Orwell, and Rand? And I would say of the three, Rand gave the best arguments for liberty against tyranny. I really believe that Ayn Rand has saved the world several times over.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, you can say objectivism hasn't won yet because not everybody's an objectivist. There are still tyrannical states. Even the semi-socialist countries, they just won't leave us alone.
And there are still people who are constantly ruining their lives because they make the wrong choices because they don't think and they don't question. And that's sad, too.
But I think Leonard Peikoff is right. To save the world is the simplest thing in the world once you understand that what it means is to think, to be rational, and then to put your thoughts into action. To be rational both in thought and in action. To think rationally and act accordingly. The world has already been saved. Now, you might say, no, it hasn't. There's still all this stuff. Then I will remind you that you are freer than you realize. I wake up every morning. I don't have to go to work. You don't have to go to work. What do you mean? You'll lose your job. Yeah, then you find another job. I can't find another job. The point is the government is certainly not telling you, as they did in Soviet Russia, as they still do in North Korea, you have to go to work, and here are the places we're going to let you work, or here's the specific place we're going to tell you to work. No, we have too many options. You don't have to go to the bread, the baker, the government bread baker, and stand in line and get a loaf of bread. The biggest problem we have here in the United States, and I think most of Europe and much of the world, is I got to get myself to stop eating so much. We are an obese nation. We have too many options, and we have too much availability.
Yeah.
Both of those are real challenges. And it's the same thing with where to live and how you want to dress. No sports coat today. It's too warm in the studio today. Okay, I could go on with that, but of course I don't want to give short shrift to the degree to which we're not as free as we should be. But the world's already been saved several times over, and when you say, I want to save the world, I just want you to concretize that. I want you to say, wait, what do I mean by that? What would have to happen for me to say, oh, now I've saved the world? That we've gone to fully voluntary funding of the government, no taxation. Folks were talking online about, can we do it with just tariffs? Which is interesting because some of the founding fathers wrote and said that's how they wanted to finance the government. Well, now that we blow $4.4 trillion a year, no, you can't do it. There's only like $3 trillion in tariffs collected, or not tariffs, in trade a year. And you can't have 100% tariffs. You'll wipe out international trade. Yes, there is a lot of tyranny and oppression, and things aren't the way that they should be. But how much more would they have to be the way they should be before you say, oh man, we've saved the world? And my answer is we've already saved the world. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop writing. I'm not going to stop podcasting. I'm not going to stop writing to my Congress critters. I'm not going to stop doing the things that I do to try to save the world, because I get moral fire from that. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not going to say, it's not working because we're not free yet.
Well, the most important part, I think, about all of Ayn Rand's ideas, or the ideas that I've integrated into my thinking, which I know to be true because they actually work in reality, and they work with the nature of my actions and my thinking, my whole being, is the fact that she makes positive assertions. She gives a positive vision for what you should do. She actually brings a normative ethics where it isn't just, oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. It's the shouldn'ts are there, but she mainly presents what the shoulds are. And she explains them, and she gives you a vision, and she integrates that into metaphysics, and she integrates into epistemology, and she explains reason, she explains ethics, and how the virtues actually relate to your faculty of reason. And she relates that to action, and she talks about politics, and she untangles extremely complex, extraordinarily messy policy in politics in such an elegant way, and draws it back to all the the branches before it. So anyway, we all know this, a lot of us here in this chat. But when I was a when I was a teenager and I read Brave New World and Animal Farm and a bunch of others, Nietzsche and everybody, it was just, there wasn't any hope. There wasn't an actual game plan. There wasn't an actual course of action to take, because it was just, oh, you got to call out the hypocrisy. You need to start yelling at people louder. You can't give them an alternative because there is no alternative. But we do have an alternative, and that should be celebrated. That should be talked about loud and proud, big and bold, And we are the kind of people who need to do it. To our friends, to our family, to our coworkers. As a matter of fact, I just got a coworker to read Robert Garmong's Objectivism book, that tiny pamphlet that he made, which is so well written. Robert Garmong, we're hoping to see him actually in a couple of weeks, when hopefully he will be coming back to the States. And we're going to be driving over to meet him. And it's going to be a grand event. But, I mean, here we are, you know, I'm just really proud of the fact that I got a coworker to read the book. And,
yeah, if
it's fun.
if you've ever wanted a primer on Objectivism,
yeah,
there's a bunch of good ones out there, but Dr. Garmong's is really short and
Yes.
very readable.
Oh, so good.
And so if you're curious, if you got friends you'd like to hand something to and you can't get them to read Ayn Rand first, get them a copy of Why Philosophy by Dr. Garmong.
Yes.
It's on Amazon.
Why Philosophy, the Importance of Ayn Rand's Objectivism.
Yeah. Excellent book.
So good.
Sorry, I'm reading Christopher Smith, who is always writing humorously in the chat. He says, the kid on the bike. Well, if you're talking about the boy on the bicycle, I did a whole episode of Life on Earth about that. One of the last episodes I did.
Yeah.
The boy on the bicycle, the courage to face a lifetime. Look that one up on YouTube with my name and you will find it. And I was reading some of my favorite passages from Ayn Rand, and particularly The Fountainhead. And it was a great way to wrap up that series. And that's really all I wanted to say. If you catch yourself thinking, we haven't saved the world yet, or I've got more work to do before I can be happy, satisfied, look in the mirror and say good job, check that premise. Now, since it's Father's Day, let me just read this one comment from Jim Ashley. He says, about Father's Day again and about movies, you know me, you know Jim's our resident movie expert. There are 3 movies that for me are good father and son movies to watch on that day. The one that comes first to mind is October's Sky, which we've mentioned before, released in 1998, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Chris Cooper. The next one, Finding Neverland, 2004, with Johnny Depp and Freddie Highmore, even though Depp is not Highmore's father. And, of course, he mentions Shane, 1953, with Alan Ladd. Brandon DeWild, same setup. Ladd is not DeWild's father in the story. No, but they're father figures and mentors and heroes. And, yeah, wonderful. Very good stuff. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Christopher Smith, that's how you save the world. Be an objectivist. Well, it is, because it's how you save your own life. It's how you make the world what you want it to be. Listen, you can only have so much impact. You could be, rich and famous like me, a successful podcaster reaching millions of voices, or at least hundreds of voices, hundreds of minds. Or you can just be doing your own life the best you can. There's nothing you will do that is as important as living your own satisfying life. And if you want to be a successful advocate for these ideas, also living your own best life is the best way to do that. The most effective spokespeople for philosophy are the people you can look at and say, oh yeah, that's working for them. Not to get into complaining mode too much, but there's a few people out there who say, you should accept these ideas. And you look at them and you think, why? I don't want to be like that guy. I don't want the level of misery he seems to have achieved. Well, I'm only miserable because we don't have a perfect world yet. No, don't. And I know none of you would be that extreme. I'm exaggerating. But don't fall into that trap of thinking, well, I really want to share these ideas. And then you go out and what you're sharing is the anger or the misery or the frustration.
Or look at all the pain that you're causing me. Grr.
Well, yeah. So, no, I know some people say, fix yourself. Well, don't fix yourself, but make your life great.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean you have to be wealthy. Doesn't mean that you have to have a perfect relationship. It doesn't mean you have to have solved all of your problems. All it means is that you need to embrace the sense of life, the sense of my life is an end in itself. My life is worth living for its own sake. Sure, I've got problems, I've got challenges. Sure, I've got things that I want that I haven't achieved yet. But every day of my life, I am living it, and I am loving it. And, some of the best conversations I've had about philosophy were not ones where I went out and tried to sell these ideas, but where people came to me and said, why are you happy? Whether it was working in the IT business or way back when I was working in fast food. And people, why are you so happy? Well, we could be on some miserable job and everybody's unhappy about it. And I'm, not acting goofy happy, but just of general good cheer. Why are you happy? Oh, well, let me tell you. And you don't, throw a copy of Atlas Shrugged at their head. You take it slow. You meet people at their values. Do that thing. And even if it doesn't work, well, but you're happy. The very premise is make yourself happy. Make yourself successful. Again, not necessarily in dollars and cents, not necessarily in every goal that you want. But live a life that is an end in itself. Live for your own sake and for the sake of the people you care about, your kindred spirits. Do that thing. Do not let everything outside of you get too deeply into you unless it's good stuff.
Yeah, we do have a question here from Jim Ashley. He says, back to saving the world and achieving an objective perspective on saving the world. Can either of you think of the essential message of Voltaire's Candide related to the subject? And yeah, my first inclination, since I haven't actually read Candide in a while, but I remember the positive message at the very end. I looked it up to confirm it. The key to happiness is to cultivate one's own garden. Yes, and the key word there is cultivate. Yeah. You don't want to gloss over everything. I always think pangloss is the idea of, pan meaning everything and glossing over it. You don't want to be that philosopher that says all is for the best in this best of all possible worlds, which Voltaire is parodying in the story. Yes. No, but you do want to cultivate your own garden. You want to make your own life. And that doesn't just mean inside I'm going to make myself feel good. No, that means your garden, your life, your surroundings, your people, your kindred spirits, and your property, and everything that you touch, everything that you care about, as good as it can be. So neither cynicism nor empty, meaningless optimism are the way. Right. Yeah. The Leibniz's philosophical optimism in scare quotes. Was Leibniz the first hippie? Well, he was a genius. I can cut Leibniz a ton of slack for everything because he was a super genius. Right. But yes. No, it's, I come from the hippie generation, so it would be all too easy for me to be dismissive of the facts and say, hey man, peace and love, have a good time all the time. But you got to take reality into account or you're not going to have a good time no matter how much you tell yourself that. So Robin is saying I'm very hard on myself due to my upbringing, and that has been something of a struggle, difficult circumstances. I absolutely get that. And my advice is, if it gets you down, don't feel bad about it. We've said before, we've had whole episodes on emotions, and you got to let your emotions do their work. But then take action. Definitely get out there and take action. Do not let the fact that the circumstances are difficult stop you. And you're not going to say, well, okay, I'll go out and get a career. No, incremental steps. Wherever you're at professionally, whatever the next little step is, take that little step. Wherever you're at socially, friends, family, whatever the next little step is, do that little thing. Don't worry, you'll do another little thing tomorrow. You don't have to do that much so long as you do something. Romantic relationships, same thing. Don't go on a dating app and say, I'm going to find someone I can sleep with tomorrow. No, just meet somebody for coffee or go to an event, a function that you like. I won't get into the whole topic now, but the point is small steps, incremental steps. They build on each other. We could do a whole other show on, what do I do if I'm just generally not happy and not able to get what I want?
I mean, I would say you could find a coach who would be better at that kind of thing than I am, but we have a few things to say about that too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amy says in the chat. Well, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Amy, I wouldn't say you're a perfectionist, but you, like me, like many people, you do tend to think, well, if I didn't do it perfect, it's not good enough, or if I can't do it perfect, I'm not even motivated to try.
Right.
And you have been embracing half-assery this year.
Yes. It has actually been working.
And
my schemes of half-assery are working. Wahaha.
Well, and some of the things where you've said, in order to get myself to take action, I'm just not going to worry about being perfect. Some of them have been perfect anyway because you got yourself to take action. But you don't want to start out with that expectation of it's got to be perfect or it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
Heck, there are people who are like that about philosophy, about objectivism. If I can't be John Galt, then I'm nothing and I'm not even going to try.
Well, you got to give yourself credit for adopting the standards that you have. You really, 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 really do. And then you've got to trust yourself to go out and take action and say, if I can, in my own thinking, be as perfect as I am and expect all of this perfection, then if I apply this thinking to action, and if it's half as good as how I think about things and how accurate I try to apply, my reasoning and my thought, it's going to be amazing. You've got to believe in the power of your own reason. You've got to believe in the power of your own intellect. And you've got to apply that to action. I know it's scary. I've taken a lot of risks this year, and a lot of it has paid off. I'm going to continue on this journey. I may kind of level off here in the next few months and just kind of regroup, because sometimes you have to do that. Get a
reset
breather.
button. Love me a good reset button.
Stop and catch my breath, because I've been the busiest this year I think I've ever been, and I don't know, maybe not my entire life, I don't know, but I've been taking on a lot of very scary sometimes and daunting tasks, and I've come through. You have.
So that's what I would say about that. A lot more in the chat, including Christopher Smith, who has a different idea of half-assed. He says, you want a fast song, a slow song, a half-fast song. Yes, half-fast. Very good. The wedding we were at last night, the groom was a race car driver. In fact, he has a bumper sticker on his car that says, drive fast, don't die.
Yeah, well, he's amateur race car, yeah.
So, maybe he should be driving half-fast.
Yeah.
That's very good, Christopher. So, folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being in the chat. If I missed any of your messages, I'll be reading them later. If you have any suggestions for our next episode, which I haven't written any notes for yet, ran a little late this time, too. As I say, it's been a heck of a week. Leave them on our socials or by my email. You can find links to all of that at robertnasir.com. You can also find links to Patreon, where you can become a patron of the show. I want to continue to thank those of you who continue to support the show financially. You send coffee money, and some of you much more than coffee money, our way, and we do appreciate it, and it does keep us going. We'll be back again, I believe, next Sunday. We don't have any schedule conflicts, even though this summer is going to be busy. We will try to be as present, that's just the wrong word in this context, as possible, and we appreciate your presence in the chat, watching these shows, listening to them afterwards on the podcasting platforms. You can listen to this show anywhere that good podcasts are. Apple Podcasts, Google, you know the routine. And that's it. I want to wrap up. I want to say thank you. I want to wish you every success that you so richly, and I mean you, he's doing the pointing thing, that's so rude. I want to wish you every success, all of the happiness, all of the good times. You've already saved the world. If you're here listening to this, you woke up this morning and did what you needed to do. Maybe not everything you wanted to do, but what you needed to do. If you are getting through every day, getting to this point, you are a star. You are saving the world. You're certainly saving your world. We do not take that for granted, so we are glad you are here, and that's why we are sending you, not just wishing you, we are sending you bundles and bundles of love.